chair, master chair, that is. It's won one of the highest, several awards with Vistage, and one of, the Don Cope Award is the highest award in Vistage, and he's earned that. So Pete, so I'm proud to call him a friend, and proud to say that he's just an incredible leader and coach of business leaders.
Since I showed where people can get it, they obviously can get it, but I want to give you an opportunity to close this part of the conversation with, is there anyone in the 16 or 17 you just want to give a shout out? Because I gave you Freeman, I gave you Jan Fox and Andrew Bennett. Do you want to give a small list of people that
when there's over 600 people that have been interviewed, I get asked all the time, is there a favorite? January 1, through that time of flying out, almost every weekend I was out walking. Started off just, again, walking 5, 7, 8 miles, then wanted to work up, my longest day of walking might have been 25 miles of training, but it was just the weekend, with a couple exceptions. On some 3-day weekends with holidays, I probably tried to walk, 3 days in a row just to see how my body would respond to very little recovery time. So basically, again, for 6 months, I think my teammates for making that possible.
Who was your first pick?
The first interview.
Yep.
And I was a member of Vistage, so there was a member in Vistage, and I just said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Will you be my first guinea pig? So he's in volume 1, and then I reached out to another business owner. After that interview, he became my second one, and he was kind of, intimidating in many ways when I first met him. But when I interviewed him, one of the things was that he started crying. The tears came to his eyes as he shared his personal story, and that's really when I began to see that, man.
This and like that, we were kind of called Smiley, but I'll tell you, I'm not exaggerating, probably for every 100 people I hand this card to and say, you have a beautiful smile or great, they'll say, I used to be called Smiley when I was a kid. So there couldn't be a better connection with a human. And by the way, it's the universal expression of acceptance, love, and just probably 21 attributes that would be close. Welcome to the Dr. Smiley Show. I've been excited about the show for some time. I've lost a little touch with my good friend Gordon Bernhardt, and he has been such an inspiration to me during the pandemic. He was kind enough to show me his skill set at interviewing, and some of it rubbed off on me. And he did this gorgeous version of this book, but just 18 more volumes. So this is something he allowed me to do, is take 100 of his interviews, and these are available on Amazon. But if anyone would like to win this book, I'm happy to say I printed plenty of them, and I like to give them out as gifts. So Gordon, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Smiley. So it's a pleasure to be here. So yeah, it has been a while, but I'm glad we could reconnect.
Well, one of the goals I had was to say thank you to someone on their birthday. So happy birthday. And you taught me about this day, because there's no other day that is a statement of command.
That is correct. So I've been my sister shared a poem with me one time, and again, it just resonated with me, and I felt like it was kind of a God-inspired type of poem that was kind of, measured my life, and I felt like a lot of the things in that poem were good. So, and the principle of it is that March 4th is the only day of the year that is a command. March 4th.
Yeah, and you asked me when we had lunch at the Tower Club. And you've invited me to lunch several times. So thank you for all the times you've not only treated, but that the food was fantastic every time.
Yeah,
and you asked me the trivia question, and I fell for it by saying May 4th. And you said, no, that's not a command.
Yeah, not to be confused with May the Force be with you.
Right. Yes. And then we have 3/14 coming up, Pi Day.
That's right. That's right.
I have one of my clients that Beth Robbins. If you're still looking for people, I don't know if you're still doing the profiles and success, but I just can't speak enough about how high quality the interviews are, but the gold nuggets, and just people really open up to you. And your interview style is impeccable. You are the Larry King of DC.
Well, thanks for your kind words. I'd say probably I pale in comparison to what you do, Ken. But again, I just, it became a passion project over close to probably 15 years ago, and it's just been fun to meet people and hear their personal stories. So yeah, it's been fun.
How's your birthday been?
It's been good, relaxing. Did go to the office to meet with my team and a potential client, relaxing a little bit, and obviously to do your show on March 4th on my birthday is that became a priority, and then I'll do dinner tonight. So I'm going to relax a little bit.
Well, I kind of looked at it this way that on someone's birthday, they certainly don't want to work, but to be able to, I guess, be celebrated is a way of me saying thank you. And I know you have this birthday, and I just want to let the world know you make a big difference. I have a couple questions, and then we're going to go back to who is Gordon Bernhardt. So the first question I have is, are you still doing these books?
When COVID struck, obviously all the face-to-face interviews stopped. So basically I became, all the interviews halted. Um, so I started doing a podcast, at that time, but the podcast wasn't nearly as personal
Mm.
as you being in my office, sitting across, table, sitting across basically in a casual conference room, you sitting comfortably in a chair, just in that face to face, we just have more time to discuss things. If it's on camera, it's hard to do that type of interview over an hour and a half or 2 hours and have it be as impactful. So I didn't, I had fun doing it, but then, I just didn't feel the same impact with the podcast. So I stopped the podcast at a stage where I actually merged, sold my company to another firm. And now I'm basically in a semi-retired role with my company, and I want to do probably, I've published 16 volumes on Amazon, and I want to probably do one more volume. So I still have some openings that I've filled, that I want to schedule. And then I'll probably, my guess is that'll probably be my last interview for that, and then focus on some other things.
Well, I'm sad you're ending with a number like 17. I mean, it should be 20 or 24. Um, so you have
Three, 304, right? 304.
is that what it is? It's 300.
No, 304 volumes. That would be a lot of volumes.
That would be a lot of volumes, but but you have 17 editions, 17 actual physical books. I mean, you will have 17.
Yes, we'll have 17 that are all listed on Amazon.
And there's roughly 40 per.
There's the 17th volume won't have 40, but there's 40 people in each volume, each of the first 16 volumes. So I'll probably have 20, 25 in volume 17.
Well, I bugged you before in this at least several times, and you're not free of it today or in the open air. So I'm going to bug you one more time, one last time. When are we doing a Profiles in Success gala?
Yeah. That also, obviously stopped during the
Yeah.
COVID, stage. And so yeah, I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, since you don't know the answer to the question, I do want to bring up one person I happen to be seeing this Friday that is in your book. And when I saw he was in your book, I followed through and got the lucky meeting with Dr. Freeman Hrabowski III.
Oh, wow.
And he is speaking at a conference in New Orleans this Friday. He's the keynote speaker. So
Yeah.
I have never met one person in your book that I don't like pinch myself and say, wow, the integrity, the focus, the skills, and just the mastery of what they're doing in life.
Yes, I feel I'm inspired with every interview I do. And then there's people like Dr. Hrabowski, who's just an incredible individual. People can, Google and hear his story, but here's an incredible man who leads, an East Coast university, and you know, and again, very instrumental in the civil rights movements, even spent time in jail as a kid. So he's just got a great story. What an inspirational man he is.
Well, we're not going to talk about this as much in the rest of the interview. So I do want to just finish up with Andrew Bennett was someone I knew before I met you. And it was also refreshing to see some of the people I had seen that you said they're that important. We want them in Profiles in Success. So Andrew Bennett and then Jan Fox. And then you allowed me, and then Ken Chaletsky. I know he just
Yes,
retired a couple years ago, but he's the
yes,
one who partnered with you to some degree on making this look as beautiful as he.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, Ken was instrumental to helping me create kind of a custom book, which what you is what you just displayed. It's not the book that's on Amazon, but this allowed me to basically create a custom book that I could put all government contractors, all women, or just people, you and your connections. So Ken did a wonderful job in helping me, do that and publish that.
Yeah, and just being a real advocate of you having this profiles and success, I said, man, there's so many of these people I'd like to have in my book called The Dose of Hope. And so I'm just pulling up your books real quick.
Yeah.
So do you see them?
Yes.
Okay, so obviously this one's behind you, and we're going to have a future conversation. We are going to talk about it a little bit today because it's such an important book. But ladies and gentlemen, you cannot go wrong getting these books. Every one of
Sure.
them is fantastic. And I think I'm in 14 or 16, number 14 or
Yeah.
number 16. So
Yeah.
thank you again for allowing me to kind of make a best of, because I had all these books and I was like, I can't carry them all around, Gordon. Can I just pick some of these great chapters? And you said, by all means. And there's an important person I wanted to acknowledge that I failed to put on the front cover. And I don't know if you put this person on the front cover, but it's the person, Peter Schwartz, who did the forward for you.
Yes. Yes. Peter is a good friend, an incredible Vistage chair, master chair, that is. It's won one of the highest, several awards with Vistage, and one of, the Don Cope Award is the highest award in Vistage, and he's earned that. So I'm proud to call him a friend, and proud to say that he's just an incredible leader and coach of business leaders.
Since I showed where people can get it, they obviously can get it. But I want to give you an opportunity to close this part of the conversation with, is there anyone in the 16 or 17 you just want to give a shout out? Because I gave you Freeman, I gave you Jan Fox and Andrew Bennett. Do you want to give a small list of people that
When there's over 600 people that have been interviewed, I get asked all the time, is there a favorite? And then probably the answer to that, the favorite is always the last one,
right?
because that's the one that's, front of mind. You
Yeah.
you think about them and you're always touched by their inspirational story. So, but it's fun to go back and read my first interview, read the second interview. And again, those are some incredible people. And I'm thankful that they all participated, because that built into the success of Profiles and Success.
I think you have a hidden gem that if you ever wanted my help in this, I would be there for you as a friend and as an advocate of this beautiful project. And that is, you have the interviews, and Audible is a way to digest media. So if you ever wanted to redo any of this as a way of having a QR code to hear the interviews, I think your interviews are just brilliant. I left that interview with you and said, wow, I've never downloaded and given so much information about myself. You really you really guide people into a way that you say, I didn't even remember all that stuff. Love
And
the
that's what's fun, when they reflect on things that they'd long forgotten about, but they are clearly instrumental. They're a defining moment, in many respects. And I think, again, last thing or one of the things I'll say about Profiles of Success too, is that I think, people, I think young people should read these stories, because if I'm 18 years old or 22-year-old and I'm looking for my, again, what am I supposed to know? I'm supposed to know everything at this point. What's my future going to look like? Most of the people here didn't know what they were going to do at the age of 22, but you just took a step, and then another step, and then, lo and behold, they've got a success story. So yeah, so I think all of these, everybody in Profiles and Success is a relatable role model, and young people can be inspired by them, and a business, the business's customers can be inspired also by the leader of that organization.
Well, I told you before the show I was going to thank you for this. And on your birthday, I'd like to thank you that you're one of the very instrumental people that inspired me to do the Dr. Smiley Show. And there's several things about the Dr. Smiley Show that's very unique. And one is, as you just said, the duration of the show, the duration of the interview. Today, we're doing an hour because I wanted to have another interview with you with Dennis Patoka, who also did a book on El Camino. So, and I would be more than happy to have another show after that, another show, because you're just awesome.
Well, thank you.
But you taught me about the power of the interview turning into a publication. And I just really appreciate that on December 28th, when I said, what is the scariest, biggest thing I could do to reconnect with all these amazing people I've met over the years. And I thought of your profiles and success. And I said, Dr. Smiley Show could adopt those principles. So thank you.
I wish you success as you continue to build this. So I'm sure you will. So I look forward to listening to your interviews.
Yeah, I think you're big 31. I only have
Okay.
I only have a couple hundred left to go. 300. All right. So Gordon, you if you would be so kind as to share, I believe the development of someone's who is the gift they give themselves before they give themselves the gift of why. So if you'd be kind enough to share where you're born, what your childhood was like, and anything was a defining moment.
Yeah. So I think again, I wouldn't be the same person that I am today if I hadn't, had been raised on a farm in northwestern Nebraska and had the parents I had. The values that they instilled in me, the work ethic that they exemplified for me, those all became part of my life. So I wouldn't be the same person without that. And I look, again, I appreciate that. I think in many respects, growing up on a farm, even though it's, obviously blue collar, again, I was driving tractors from the time I was 5 years old, but that all helped me become a better wealth manager. Now, I didn't know what my future led, where it would go. Obviously, as an 18-year-old, I was as confused as anybody else. Or when I graduated from college, I had no clue where I would be. But again, when you think back, again, the values that I learned growing up on the farm, things like, again, just the farming. Farming is a profession where you have to realize that you can't control the outcome of things. Because again, if a tornado, blizzard, drought, floods, those can be devastating to a farmer or rancher. And, Dad's example was just, again, you do the next best thing, regardless of what the outcome was. And in investments, in wealth management, that's very important. Most people think that they can find the hot stock. That's an uncontrollable thing. Nobody's been able to pick successfully stocks. So we've always preached, focus on what you can control and ignore all else. So the news from the financial media, should be ignored. Again, focus on building a properly allocated, properly globally diversified portfolio, and again, just manage it, make adjustments based upon, again, your target allocation, but not to focus on, okay, is Apple going to do better than Microsoft, or is Nvidia? Those are things that are unknowable and you can't control. So, and another thing that I think was, when I created my firm in 1994, one of the defining moments of why I created goes back to even a lesson from Dad. Because when I was a kid, probably 9 or 10, I remember my father borrowing somebody's shovel. Sorry about that.
That's just people wishing you happy birthday.
Yeah. I need. So I should have shut that off. So I apologize for that, Ken. But
That's just showing your popularity. We're happy with that.
But so my dad was building an addition onto the house, and he borrowed a shovel from a neighbor. And when we had a lot of shovels on the farm, but this shovel was different than any of the other shovels that we had. But when Dad was done with that shovel, I remember seeing him wash it off, take a steel brush to get as much rust off of it, because metal does rust,
Mhm.
and then sharpen the edge of the shovel. Now, Dad's obligation was just to return the shovel. And if he had just finished using it and it was caked with mud, the neighbor drove up and he handed the shovel to his neighbor, he would have met his obligation of returning the shovel. But
Right.
Dad always returned everything in superior condition than when he borrowed it. Whether it was, again, the truck always had a full gas tank if he borrowed somebody's car. And that, again, related to my business, because 2 years into my profession, I was hating what I saw in the financial services industry. And so I realized Dad's lesson was, you do what's right for the customer. You do the right thing all the 100% of the time. And that, I created a firm that were fiduciaries first. So our fee came from our client, our focus, the client was first, and therefore, you don't give them. Every client I always felt like deserved a clean, sharp shovel. That's the quality of the service that I wanted my team to give. So again, I wouldn't have been, I think as good of a wealth manager as I was without the influences of mom and dad, who were not financially knowledgeable individuals, but I thank them for, again, what they taught me.
I think there's a sub message there, and I've heard it said by several other people, but I think you also took the shovel and made it, I want people to be better off after they meet me too.
Yes, exactly.
And you are a great communicator via the postal system, the snail mail. I receive a minimum of a couple of cards, beautiful cards from you and your firm, just wishing me a happy holiday or a birthday. And so you're the real deal there. And and that says a lot about relationships, how important they are to you.
Yeah, they are. I'm blessed with the people, that I have in my life for sure.
I think the farm teaches that too, is that your
Yeah,
neighbor and community are going to be leaned on in times that are tough. And so you want to be that.
true. Yes.
So you got your phone call. I got my son waving to me real quick.
Well,
Okay, so
by the way, speaking of your son and you, how many books are you between the two of you have you published now?
uh 14 and 60. So
Yes.
yeah, he might be retiring though. He's not doing it this year that I know of, and I've never made him do a book. Just to be clear, I knew going into this, if I make him do a book, it'll be at some point
Yeah.
the book he does. Whereas
Yes,
if you freedom, they do as many as they want.
yes, exactly.
Your book behind you is that is your big book that you did outside of this Profiles in Success.
Correct. Yeah, but 16 profiles of success books have been published.
Right?
That's the book, it, that just touched my life when I walked. When I walked for 35 days on the Camino de Santiago, a couple, 2 or 3 years into it, when I came back, the Camino was still working in my life,
Yep.
and I felt like I had to share the stories of the Camino and make them public. So
I'm
yeah.
excited because I got to meet you before you did it, and you told me like it was about a year before you were going, and we met a couple times, and you said it's getting close. I mean, you were like a little kid, and I wish I could have gone with you. I am committed that because that was such a life changing experience for you and Dennis. And by the way, Dennis has only written one book, and he says, "Don't ever accuse me of being a writer. I just wanted to share the experience."
And so many people, there's a lot of, books on the Camino de Santiago on Amazon. So if you just type Camino, you'll get a ton of books. And that's when I first heard about the Camino. I did the same thing. I just typed in Camino and started reading people's journey on the Camino, and that then inspired me and motivated me to say, I too have to do this.
Well, so that we do not take too much away from the El Camino, the Buen Camino show that you're going to be sharing in depth with Dennis. Let's just have a 2 to 3 minute of why was that trip drawn to you? Why was it so important that you did this trip?
Um, I don't know. It's just one of those things that when I first heard about it, again, from my sister shared with me the story of it. And it's probably right around the time that a movie came out that was directed by Emilio Estevez, and his father, Martin Sheen, was in it. So I'm guessing my sister probably saw the movie and said, and she knew that I really liked these longer hikes. I hiked to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and back, and and I love being outdoors and hiking. And she said, you might want to try this. And at the time I said, well, I'll consider it. And then as I read it, it just said, I got to do this. It's something that I think would be cool to walk in a foreign country and walk on a historic trail that the Roman Empire would have trudged along on parts of the trails that I walked. And just to see the miracles that are attributed to the Apostle James, since this is kind of the Camino de Santiago is basically a tribute, an honor to the Apostle James, even though today most people are just walking because because they want to walk, whereas obviously in 900 AD, people were walking for, their faith. It was part of their Christian experience. So, but again, and I'm a Christian, but it didn't have that type of influence on me. I just thought this would be kind of a neat long distance walk that was clearly longer than a day. It wasn't going to be a major camping trip. And at the time, I clearly had no expectation for what I would get from it. I would just figured I'll just, when I'm done, I'm done. I'll walk. And, in the next show, we can talk about, again, some of the influences or just how it truly touched my heart in a much bigger way than I could have anticipated.
Well, we'll just do some of the facts. Okay, just some of the facts. Let's get to facts. Number one, how many days did you prepare for this trip?
This was 2018, and I flew out on July, I think my first day of walking was July 18th. And so
No, but,
you know, from,
before that, how many days did you prepare? Like you had
yes,
mental and all that. You
yes.
had a lot of stuff you had to prepare.
So from basically January 1, through that time of flying out, almost every weekend I was out walking. Started off just again walking 5, 7, 8 miles,
Hmm.
then wanted to work up. My longest day of walking might have been 25 miles of training, but it was just the weekend, with a couple exceptions on some 3-day weekends with holidays. I probably tried to walk, 3 days in a row just to see how my body would respond to very little recovery time. So basically, again, for 6 months, for 7.5 months, I was walking every weekend.
Fact number two, how many days did it take you to do it?
So I walked for 35 days, from starting that in that small village in France called Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and then crossed, that day number one, crossed the Pyrenees, entered Spain, and continued walking for 31 days to the cathedral in Santiago de Compostela, and where the remains of the Apostle James is supposed to be buried. And then I walked another 4 days to Muxia and Finisterre on the coast. That was important to me because I began at this kind of traditional, the modern starting point for the Camino Frances, and Finisterre means the end of the earth. And I thought, well, it'd be cool to end my journey, my physical walk, at the end of the earth. So 35 days of walking, 618 miles in total, I think, and it was just probably close to 1,000 miles if you factor in the training hikes that I did.
That was fact number three. How long is it? And then fact number four, approximately how many people, as you know, do this a year?
Oh, there's last year they set a new record, and I can't remember what it was, but there are a couple hundred, 300,000 a year that are walking, and there's multiple paths, not just the Camino Frances that I walked. There are multiple paths that people can take, but on any of these paths, short or long, there's during the course of the year, you have every day of the year, somebody is walking, some one of those paths.
And I heard you correctly. You said a couple 100,000, six figure of people.
Yes, yes.
And I don't know if you know this part, but do you know the percentage that complete the long walk?
Um, Probably a smaller. I don't know that, and I've never seen stats on that, but I'm guessing that a lot of people. I think you have a significant portion that will walk basically 60 kilometers because that's what you have to walk to get a certificate. And the certificate wasn't important to me, but again, if you're in Spain and you're walking, again, try to earn that certificate. So you have to walk basically 100 miles to get the certificate. So there's probably a significant portion of that and a smaller portion that do the full, 500-mile walk from France to the cathedral. So, but I don't know what the percentage is.
If you do the 618, you get the T-shirt, though. If I heard.
And you had to buy the T-shirt,
I remember one of the things you shared, just closing about this, is the importance of what shoes you're going to pick and backup of those shoes.
Yep. And that's one of the lessons of the Camino too. In the book that I wrote, there's chapters about my various takeaways. So the shoes were an important part, and there's a whole story behind the shoes.
Very good. So after the farming, you went to college and you didn't necessarily know what you were going to do. Why was it wealth management?
Well, and I'll take a step back for a little bit first, because again, my normal career was a little bit different. Even my collegiate career, I grew up on a farm in, again, northwestern Nebraska. There was a small college in a neighboring town called Chadron State College. It's claim to fame, at least claim to fame, at least from an NFL perspective, is that they are Danny Woodhead and Don Beebe, who had a great career at the Buffalo Bills. They were two successful NFL players, that graduated from Chadron State College. And I attended there for 2.5 years, or a year and a half actually, and I applied for an internship on Capitol Hill. For some reason, this farm boy wanted to go to our nation's capital, so I applied to my representative for an internship that was typically 6 weeks long. I was turned down the first time. The second time, I was a little more, maybe. I submitted a ladder campaign. I came up with, the president of the college, teachers, classmates, business people, high school teachers. So I had a list of people that I would ask to send letters for me and so I still have copies of many of the letters, that people sent. So I got the internship. That turned into a full-time job. And after 2.5 years on Capitol Hill, I said, nah, this has been an exciting time to be on Capitol Hill, but I knew I needed a degree, and I didn't see myself going back to Nebraska. So I transferred all my credits to the University of Virginia. Felt like business probably would be the way to go. And so I studied accounting, went into the business world, specifically PricewaterhouseCoopers afterwards. That led to jobs in the corporate world. And then due to a personal, event, in my life, I just said, I don't feel like I'm living my purpose. And I didn't even know what necessarily my purpose was. And I really hadn't listened
How
to a
old were you
speaker,
then?
but
How old were you then, roughly?
I would have been 32 when I
And a lot of
when
people
I
don't know their purpose at that time. So
exactly. So going through this situation, I just said I had the opportunity to just kind of re-examine my life and said, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I think some of the reflections about the values that I had growing up, and I knew that what I was supposed to do was make an impact in people's lives. Didn't know necessarily how that would be, but I had, in the company I was with, we had some employees and I started an investment club. So I was drawn to financial services thinking that, again, if I can help people make informed and smart decisions about their money, that could be an impactful, journey. So I entered the financial services industry, um, then at the age of 32, and 2 years later, I was basically ready to leave because I hated the conflicts of interest that I saw. And fortunately, some good friends said, if you create your own firm and you kind of remove those conflicts of interest, then, don't give up on this profession, and do that. So I had the courage to start the firm, struggled for several years, but that led me to, again, creating my firm, making an impact in people's lives. And it's just thankful the team that I developed, that I grew, the impact that we've made in our clients' lives is something that I'm extremely appreciative that we were able to help them and help protect them, help them make informed decisions and keep them from, again, making emotional decisions in this roller coaster of life. And then that led me to kind of, again, as the firm grew, profiles and success, also became a way because I found that became a way. If I help, if I help CEOs leverage their personal story, that's making an impact too in people's lives. And a reader in Romania, you know, could read a story of somebody online and be inspired. So you just never know who is going to be touched by these stories.
So that leads to a couple questions. So since you brought up profiles again, we're going to go there for a second. How many years into your new business did you come up with, I'm going to do this profiles and success?
That was probably, if I've been doing this for 15 years, it's probably about 14 years into the new business. And I wouldn't have been able to do it except by having some great teammates. So I had some great colleagues that were doing a lot of the client interfacing. This freed my time up to, again, to build relationships and help people in the business community through profiles and success. So again, I thank my teammates for making that possible.
Who was your first pick?
The first interview.
Yep.
So I was a member of Vistage. So there was there was a member in Vistage, and I just said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Will you be my first guinea pig? So he's in volume one. And then I reached out to another business owner after that interview. He became my second inner one, and he was kind of, intimidating in many ways when I first met him. But when I interviewed him, well, one of the things was that he started crying. The tears came to his eyes as he shared his personal story. And that's really when I began to see that, man, if people allow the onion to be peeled away and they share these defining moments and these personal stories, again, some of them can be low points in somebody's life and some of them can be high points. But again, can be emotional stories, for them to remember and relate to. And again, I ran into him a few years later at Boston Airport, and I looked across the kind of the cafeteria, and I said, "That looks like Rick."
What's Rick's
And
last name?
um,
We can put
yeah,
links later. I know. I'm sorry.
yeah, yeah,
How about
yeah.
the first person? Do you remember his name?
Todd. And again, I can't think of his last name right now.
Okay,
So
so
I
we're going to put
apologize
links.
for.
Well, to be fair, we're going to put links because those are the first
Okay.
people you brought up,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
can do that after the show.
Yep. And so, yeah, Rick saw Rick across at the Boston Logan International Airport, and I looked at him. Our eyes caught, and he, acknowledged it. Then I started talking to the people I was with, and I looked over again later and didn't see him. So he must have run to the restroom or something because eventually he started walking back. So we just had this neat connection. That again, he remembered me just because we had this. When people share themselves, they just again, they remember me as a great conversationalist, even though I didn't say anything right.
That's the magic of interviewing, isn't it?
It is. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I've been in some interviews where the interviewer talked more than I did, and I said, I don't know if I need to be here.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's an interesting dance because you can't get information unless you're going to listen and allow the audience to enjoy what is being asked.
Yes.
So I had another question about the profiles and success, but since I'm not having that, okay, let's go back to struggles. You said that when you started your wealth management, your first year or two was struggles. I know what it was. Okay, let's go to struggles first. What was the struggles that you had overcome to get that to work?
Well, again, just to start a practice and your income is dependent upon, the fees you charge. Again, it's not like I started off with $25 million of assets under management. I started off with zero and I had to gain, the first $100,000, account or $200,000 account. So it was a struggle financially, and I was beating myself up in many ways because here I graduated from, again, one of the top undergrad business schools in the country at the University of Virginia. I looked at a lot of my peers, from McIntyre and my peers that were at PwC and they were thriving in their career. And part of the psychological battle for me was just feeling good about myself. But fortunately, again, I was committed to this. I basically burned, every bridge behind me, so to speak, not in a bad way, but I just said, this is the direction I'm going. There is no alternative path. So therefore, I must succeed. And I did all the activities that were necessary to build a successful wealth management practice.
I'd like to surmise that there's just so many people that say, I'm now in insurance or I'm now in real estate or I'm now in wealth, and you can't take them seriously because the amount of fallout of the first year is outrageous.
Yeah.
Outrageous because you don't have anyone that sees that you have the experience or
Yes.
that you're that committed. I mean, on top of it
Yes.
all. And
Yes.
so it is the magic third year. So when I became a
I
DJ,
agree.
they say, okay, that's nice. Like the first year, okay, that's nice. And the second year they go, okay, looks like he's enjoying it. And the third year they're like, okay, we can talk. That's a long wait.
Exactly. That's true.
So the question I had was, you pick people and profiles and success. This is my guess that inspired you, that you really want to have a genuine conversation. It did not matter if they were a client or not. Is that accurate?
Correct. Client was irrelevant. That if we had a client at that time who was a business owner or an executive, was a leader of some sort, then I would reach out and say, hey, again, I appreciate the business. How about if I, interview you and give you a kind of this profile of success? But I didn't have necessarily a lot of business owners, so therefore it was people that I was meeting professionally. I was part of a radio show for a few years, and so as we had CEOs to, take a 10-minute, 12-minute segment on the radio show, I would reach out and say, would you like to do longer interview for a book? And so not everybody did because, again, business owners and CEOs are very busy people. But I started doing that, and people would also then nominate other people. So it was easy. Once the first book was published, it was easy. It became much easier to to get other people because now I had a tangible product in hand, and the website was developed probably 4 or 5 volumes into it. And that gave me then things that I could share electronically through social media, could share it with somebody, say, hey, check out Profiles of Success at this site and read about Dr. Smiley, for example, or whatever. So that's how it kind of grew.
Yeah, I love how you were able to really market them afterwards. Facebook was more of and LinkedIn and Facebook were your big two.
Yes.
LinkedIn from a standpoint of, I think, the connection, Facebook more from the publicity piece, if I recall.
Yes. Yeah. So I think, yeah, I agree.
And the people that were in this book, what were some of the things that you learned that you just never would have guessed?
Wow. I think I look at things, as again, my life. And let's talk just briefly about leadership, for example. I didn't have, I wasn't this person that graduated from college, got a job at Lockheed Martin, had a mentor, and I developed my career there. And then I ran, I was highly successful at Lockheed Martin, then jumped to Northrop Grumman or someplace, and eventually kind of growing that. I never really felt like I really had a mentor during that period of time. So as my firm was growing, I had to take my role to my teammates seriously because they deserved a leader. And I had, doubts about my own leadership. And I think, as you know, probably a lot of CEOs and a lot of leaders also have imposter syndrome. But I doubted my own, ability to lead. So I joined Vistage to have that ability to mingle, once a month with other CEOs. So that became a big part of my leadership development to hear these speakers that come in and have the business coach available. But then also just in an indirect way, everybody that I interviewed, if you learned a little bit about their leadership trajectory, I'd say that's a cool thing. I'm going to try to implement that practice or whatever. So again, there's probably not one thing I could say that came from Profiles of Success, but everybody had something unique that was just neat to kind of incorporate in my life in some way. So I'm this individual here that's made up of over 600 people, that have influenced my life in one way or the other.
I want to make a blanket statement about the theory I have about the busyness. So I think when you first started doing Profiles of Success, more CEOs were busy. And as you kept doing Profiles of Success, they got less busy. And I say that from a standpoint that you became more valuable to spend time with. So I always ask people when they say, oh my God, I'm so busy, I can't do it. I go, well, if Oprah called you, would you have the time? Yeah, I'm ready right now. We can get on a plane right now.
Exactly. A lot of truth to that.
Yeah, I mean, I know how hard I had to work. I had to stalk you for, I guess it was almost 3 months. You're like, okay, already, we're going to get you in Profiles and Success.
I don't know if it was that bad. Yeah, for all the listeners, I don't think Ken stalked me, but we did connect. There were things I learned about you, and I just said, yeah, we got to meet. And we met for lunch first, I believe.
Yeah,
to learn a little about you, and then I said, okay, yeah, gotta schedule an interview for Profiles and Success. So.
Do you have any picks that you are like, I'm so glad I picked that as a wealth management piece? Like, did you know Tesla was going to get this big? Did you anticipate Apple? Nothing like that?
No, again, like I might have shared earlier,
Yes.
Talking about my farm background, again, nobody's been able to successfully pick the top stocks every year. So my personal portfolio and the portfolios of our clients, whatever the equity portion we have, I have over 12,000 stocks around the globe. You know, I believe, again, we think of GE. I can remember GE was a hot stock, in the 90s, and everybody believed in GE. The trajectory of that
Right.
as a stock was just phenomenal. And the idea of selling GE, was unthinkable because it was going to continue down this trajectory and continue to grow to even more. And then obviously it fell big time. Again, Apple's a great company. Who knows if that's going to happen, for them at some point, but nobody stays, at the top. I forget this number of the statistic, but the percentage of Fortune 500 companies that merge or go out of business is quite significant over a decade in time. So yes, you can't count on. I never encourage people to focus on one stock. If they want to play, if they want to speculate, yeah, go ahead. But they should focus more on building a diversified portfolio for their family's financial security.
100% agreed. And this is a fluke I'm bringing up just for the fun of it, but I shouldn't, in a way, it's not the fun of it. My poor friend has some very serious health issues. And when he had these health issues, it caused marital issues, and he kind of ended up being alone. And his dad gave him $5,000 back in around the 2010 range that he put into Bitcoin. Okay. And then he was in his friend's house, and he had a couch. I mean, that's where he was. And his friend said, I don't know if you have any money, but this new company, Tesla, if you have even $5,000, anyway, he has many millions now. But what he did was smart, is he really studied who was investing. He watched the big boys, how they're investing, and he followed, if they're doing this, then I should do this. And so, the news kind of is the aftermath of that information. What they were doing, studying them before it even gets out, is kind of a good idea.
Exactly.
So what's up with Gordon for 2025? What's your new challenge? I know that I checked off Machu Picchu, and I know that you've now inspired me that I have to copycat you and experience the Camino.
So effective January 1 of 2025, I'm kind of in the semi-retired role with my company. I still have some responsibilities here to be available to clients if my teammates need me to be there for a client, but to continue to be a goodwill ambassador for the company and try to help Modera grow. Outside of that, I want to, since the Camino had such an impactful part of my life in 2025, I want to build a keynote talk talking about the Camino message, talk about it, to share that story with CEOs, business owners, and again, help them understand why the Camino should be important to them. And here's some of the lessons why that's important to you as you build your wealth, as you build your legacy. So that's something I want to do. I do plan on going back to do the Camino, but in 2027. 2027, again, I'm not Catholic. And so Spain is a Catholic country, and the Camino is basically Catholic, but on July 25th what is it? It's I forget the name of it now. It's the day of Saint Francis, or Saint James Day, and whenever July 25th falls on a Sunday, it becomes a holy year on the Camino. So 2027 is the next holy year on the Camino, and I want to be there to see people walking into the cathedral, after a long walk, just to see how they do it. Maybe there's a celebration to go, that would take place. So I want to go back and walk that, but I do plan on walking from the cathedral, going back to France, and then again, Lord willing, I'd walk back. I would then turn around and walk from France, where I started before, back to the cathedral. So I would be walking for close to a full quarter in that particular case. So I do want to do that. The Machu Picchu, Mount Kilimanjaro, I need to get in shape to be able to do those things. So I want to do those types of hikes, see the parks, the national parks in our great country. I just returned from spending 11 days in Yellowstone National Park. Again, had a wonderful time. The winter is such a beautiful time to be in Yellowstone. It's, the crowd, not nearly as many crowds, but the wildlife, it just is spectacular. So those
Well,
are some of the things.
that's fantastic, and I think it's going to be really interesting having 600 people from Profiles and Success going to the Camino together. All of it.
That would be that would be interesting.
I'm not sure if you saw on Facebook, but I did choose you as my
Oh,
as my cover. And let's see your choose cover, see cover photo. There it is.
so
And that's at the
that's that. There's your card.
yes.
Yep, I
But
love it.
the card to me is corny as it is to hold it. It's really about me saying you do it. You really care about people smiling. And I didn't know I was going to do a dissertation on smiles, but it was, what is your SPH? What are your smiles per hour? And I have to say, you bring a very abundant amount of SPH to the world for yourself and for others. I mean, you're smiling right now, just out of the habit of happiness. So I'm so glad you were on the show today.
Yeah.
Anything I didn't cover that you'd like to share with the world?
Well, let me ask you a question. When did you get your nickname, Smiley?
I got it. So I was called several different nicknames based on the industries I was in, but the industry of me getting this card, they didn't know my name. It's like, earlier you said you didn't have their last names, but you knew their first name. Ken Rochon doesn't sell books, but Dr. Smiley sure does. And so when I
Uh,
get this, they go, Mr. Smiley. Well, when I got my PhD, they said, okay, it's Dr. Smiley now. I said, I'm getting this more for anything just to have the cool name of Dr. Smiley.
it is a cool name, and I in high school that was my nickname when I went
Really?
from I spent grades 1 through 8 in a one-room country school. Like think of again the Little House on the Prairie and that one little school that housed grades 1 through 8. And there were a lot of one-room country schools in that part of the Midwest. And then after you finish your 8th grade, you move in, you go into the city school, for grades 9 through 12. And at that point, when as a ninth grader, my nickname was Smiley. Graduated after 4 years and the just kind of put it didn't encourage its use as much, but I still am thankful that hey, I had such a positive nickname. So many times young people have a nickname that
Right.
is disparaging and it can be discouraging. And my mom, by the way, had a beautiful smile. She was known for her smile. So I got my smile from my mom.
That, sir, is why the biggest reason. My mom was the epitome of the eternal optimist. And
Yes.
when someone handed me this card, which was Barry Shore, I said, this is now my life. By the way, I did not create this card. And
Yeah. I remember that.
and it was just such a big deal when he gave it to me because finally, after 7 years, to your point of how long it takes to find your purpose, I said that was the 7-year journey I had to do.
That's
And
neat.
so you and I have this in like that we were kind of called Smiley, but I'll tell you, I'm not exaggerating, probably for every 100 people I hand this card to and say, you have a beautiful smile or great, they'll say, I used to be called Smiley when I was a kid.
Yes.
So there couldn't be a better connection with a human. And by the way, it's
I agree.
it's the universal expression of acceptance, love, and
Yes.
and just probably 21 attributes that would be collaborative.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. It's
I have 5 exit questions for you. They're all fast, so you don't have to elaborate, but they're just so the audience can see what we would have gone into more if we had a long interview, and 2, what the programming is that really causes Gordon. So here we go.
sure.
A book that changed your life.
I'm going to go back to, there's a lot of books that leaders have read, but I think one of the books that started me on this path was a book that I was given when I was a senior in high school by the faculty. They gave me the I Dare You Award. There's a book called I Dare You. It's a simple book written by Phil Danforth. And as I started reading it, that evening or, an evening soon thereafter, I remember him daring you to finish this in one setting. And I said, I'm going to take you up, buddy. So that book, that put me on this trajectory of, again, goal setting, having a positive attitude. So I am so thankful that the teachers honored me with that book, I Dare You by Phil Danforth.
That is awesome because I've never heard about this book, and it reminds me of what Og Mandino did in The Greatest Salesman.
Oh,
I
yeah.
dare you to read this chapter 30 times.
Yeah, exactly.
What movie inspires you?
That the you know that was hard to think of. But I'm going to say two things. One, I was a high school wrestler, wasn't good. So there's things that if I see a wrestling on television, you start leaning into things, say, oh, that's, you got to do this. But I remember as a kid seeing Matthew Modine in Vision Quest. It's not a true story, but it just really, he tells the story of a high school senior who basically was somewhat lost, but he decided to drop two classes down
Mhm.
and to wrestle, in a neighboring town, the a three-time state champion who is undefeated in his high school career. So the movie progresses to that, and he does beat this kid. But there's a wrestling movie coming out called Unstoppable, and it's about a one-legged
Yeah, it's out.
wrestler.
It's out, and I watched it. It's fantastic.
I want to watch it because
And
that's a true story.
that is a true story.
And that's got to be inspirational when you see people, who are handicapped, who have overcome a handicap, to do that. I'm anxious to go see that in theaters.
I am eager for you to see it too. I would almost just say this is my treat, taking you out on your birthday week to go see that. I love that movie, and it is, you start it and you get roped in, and to your point, it was not easy. It was 10 times harder for him to wrestle with one leg.
Oh,
Some people think that a handicap can sometimes give you an edge. It was not at all the case.
I can't imagine because you can't use the figure four with your legs. You can't, you've only got one leg that you can work with. I don't see how. It just seems like he was doomed.
And he lost bad. He lost so bad in the beginning. He had to overcome a lot of things to get some
Yeah,
balance. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a
yeah,
boy. That's interesting. You picked a movie you haven't seen that you're going to see. That's awesome. Well,
yeah,
you picked Vision Quest first, so that's, and I
yeah.
did agree. Vision Quest was amazing. What's the song that gets you going?
I'm going to tell you a little story with this one because I was in a group of people once and we went around. The question that we had to share was, and this was when CDs were prevalent. Obviously, now CDs are not, you don't play CDs now with music on them. But the question in this room, since CDs were a prevalent form of, again, buying music and playing it on your car or a CD player, they basically said, hey, what's your favorite CD? So they went around the room and my response was, I don't recommend CDs. In fact, the rates of return on certificates of deposits are so poor that you should put your money in the stock market. And
Yeah.
I said it because growing up on a farm in Nebraska, the music that I listened to was that diesel tractor. So I can listen to classical music, to rock, to easy listening, to jazz, but I don't know music, so I don't really have a favorite piece of music that I listen to because again, I can have the music on and be relaxed. But if you ask me who sang a certain song, or if I was to do karaoke and I would be horrible because I wouldn't know the tune of this latest song or something.
Well, if you ever need to master listening CDs, I have at least 5 or 6 collections amounting to 5,000 to 10,000 CDs that people have given me because they're worthless, unfortunately.
Yes.
People are like, I can't get rid of them and I don't want to throw them away. Would you take them? So I have a very large collection of duplicates and triplicates. And yeah, it's
Yeah,
was my
yeah,
best investment. But I was a DJ at the time. So at least I did it legal.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Who's your hero?
I would say again, father, simply because again, I wouldn't be the same person without dad's influence, and that doesn't belittle, that doesn't take anything away from mom because I still have mom's soul,
Mhm.
have dad's work ethic. So dad is, dad has to be a hero from that perspective. And as a Christian, I'd say Jesus Christ is obviously, gotta say, I feel like I have been so blessed in my life that as my business has grown, I feel like God brought certain people into my life, that I needed to hear, brought certain ideas that helped my business. So again, I wouldn't have been able to if I didn't have the values, the work ethic that mom and dad instilled in me. But I still think it's that combination. I'm thankful for God, for His blessings and for His direction and the people and the ideas that He's brought into my life.
So I have 2 rules about these 5 questions. Rule number 1, you pass. You put, I dare you. If you put the Bible, I go, and your second choice. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
When,
I would say the same thing.
so when people pick mom and dad, people may not know mom and dad as well as you do. So who is someone that you would identify let's make it more interesting. Who's one, two, or three? You can pick up to three people you wish you could meet to have in Profiles in Success. Up to three.
On this day and age, of course, it would be, again, we live in a very divisive country in some respects, but wouldn't it be neat to get to know Donald Trump's heart a little bit more? So I think an Elon Musk, and it could be the leaders of the opposition party. Again, I think I'd learn a lot from an interview of Barack Obama too. So I would, again, instead of buying into everything we read about these leaders, and again, since I did start my kind of career, my first job out of college was on Capitol Hill, I still like politics in that sense. So, but I think it'd be kind of cool to spend some time with a couple of former presidents. George W. Bush at the time, growing up on a farm, you tossed horseshoes, and George Herbert Walker Bush obviously loved pitching horseshoes. So at the time, I said, "Boy, that'd be kind of cool to pitch horseshoes with George Herbert Walker Bush." But I think I would say former presidents like that would be kind of cool to just have that one-on-one time and hear their heart.
I've done, believe it or not, 600 shows. This Dr. Smiley is only 31 right now, but Voice America was about 500 and change. And then I did my own thing for a while. I say this to say politics and religion were avoided because I didn't want to offend people. But I want to say something to you. This is going to be 3 times I talk about politics this week. So number one, a couple of days ago, a guy named Dino Klein, we had a rule that we weren't going to bring it up, but if we did bring it up, we were going to just say something that could not offend anybody. So guess you want to hear what I said? I said, Dino, what do you think about politics? And he goes, I think they're so important. And that was the end of that conversation. And then you did it very nicely because you said, I just want to talk to leaders and hear their heart. So that was politics. And tomorrow I'm actually having a show, and I'll send a copy to you because I think it's an interesting show. It's a human behaviorist that wants to talk about the dynamics that happen in that room with Trump and the president of Ukraine. And
that would be, yeah.
It's an interesting show because he's not political. He wants to talk about what happened that stopped the hearing, the listening, and the empathy. The empathy was missing in that conversation. So that's a sidebar. Sorry about that, but I was just very interested. For 600 shows, I've never talked politics. This week, the word politics is coming.
Well, right. Have fun with the next interview, with that particular interview.
Yes, that should be interesting. So my final question to you, sir, is what quote do you live by?
Yeah, there's so many good quotes, obviously. I can remember, around the time, maybe in college at Chatham State College, some professor gave me this book that was just nothing in it, just start writing quotes. And given the books I was reading kind of on positive thinking and setting goals, I think one of the first quotes I put in there, was Winston Churchill's quote, never quit. And that became a big part of it. But I don't want to say that's my favorite. Since this is March 4th, there is the fourth stanza of the poem March 4th that's on my personal website, or it's in the book. That March 4th, the fourth stanza says, and keep in mind the first 3 stanzas talk about the various holidays during the year, again, watching the fireworks on 4th of July, Christmas presents, whatever the case may be. The third stanza sets up the fourth stanza that basically says there's no other day that says more than what March 4th says. So the fourth stanza says, when you have problems, March 4th. When things don't work out, March 4th. When bad things happen, March 4th. When you lose, March 4th. So I want to say that's something that is, I think I wouldn't be here if I didn't have to overcome the things along the way. So I live that stanza. So March 4th.
And I really enjoyed our email dialogue of not getting an email. I got to tell the audience that you wrote this beautiful, just such a diplomatic statement saying, if you keep emailing me at this address, I guarantee you'll never get. was the best.
And so unfortunately you texted it so I could see that the
Yeah.
misspelling. Yeah.
I wanted you on the show a lot because you mean a lot to me, Gordon. And happy birthday! Thank you for
Thank
spending
you.
part of your day and just being the gift and light that you always are. I hope we can break bread, and I hope it can be on my treat to you as a thank you. How can
Love
people
to.
either reach you, follow you, and if they want some information or advice on wealth management, I'm guessing you could direct them to your company.
Sure. The company website is moderawealth.com. My personal website where my Camino blog is, and there you can learn other little things about me is my name, gordonjbernhardt.com. So those are the two ways to reach out to me.
And I did forget to ask this. May I ask what the J stands for?
Joel.
Joel. Okay. I'm a J James. So I think I've asked all the good questions I could ask in our first interview. The next one's going to take a deep dive, obviously, with Dennis. And I will tell you I think the biggest gift you can ever give is the power of connection. And you've inadvertently and also physically given me so many great connections. And I hope that Dennis serves as a way of me thanking you back.
I bought his book and I'm looking forward to reading it and then looking forward to talking with him. So it'll be fun to be on the same show with them. So thanks, Ken, for a wonderful day today, to help celebrate my birthday with your wonderful interview. So thank you very much. And I wish you, continued success in all that you do.
Thank you. So enjoy your birthday dinner. We'll be in touch. I'll find out when it's convenient for me to take you out for a birthday lunch or whatever. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ken.
Bye-bye.
Bye.